First question that pops up is always, what can I read? And they always ask this before the semester starts or before the course starts because they're so anxious to start learning. And so I think that speaks really well of legal professionals throughout the world, that this is the first question. And so I want to address it in one of my first videos. Hi there, I'm Paula Klammer. I'm a legal English coach, lawyer, and translator. And for the past 20 years, I have worked at the intersection between law and language, helping global professionals to really hone their English skills so that they can grow professionally. I've put together a video today that addresses the number one question that my students ask me. What can I read? So let's get to it. The number one resource that I recommend that you have when you're trying to learn legal English is an English monolingual dictionary. What do I mean by that? I mean just a dictionary of English. Number two, I recommend a really good law dictionary. My context is American, and so my recommendation is American as well. For American law dictionary, I recommend Black's Law. It is the classic go-to that lawyers in the US use. Number three, I recommend a good dictionary of legal usage. The difference between a law dictionary and a dictionary of legal usage is that a law dictionary is just going to give you a definition of a word. A dictionary of legal usage is different because a dictionary of legal usage goes a little bit into how we use the word in sentences. And so it will tell you, for example, if it's a verb, it will tell you what prepositions we normally use with that verb. It will make certain grammatical recommendations for you when using that word. And so it is more useful when you're trying to put that word into context yourself. Number four, if you are going to be writing for US readers, for example, if you're writing a paper that you intend to publish in the United States, or there's any connection to the United States specifically, then and only then do I recommend that you get the Blue Book. Number five, I recommend a book called Legal Writing by Design, a guide to great briefs and memos. What I like about this book is its clarity and how it really simplifies the notion of what a brief is and what a memo is. It is very specific to common law. If it's just in general, what you want to learn is how to write legal memos in English, in legal English specifically, of course, but you're not so concerned with doing common law analysis and you want to do more of what is done generally in the civil law world, then this resource is going to be a waste of money for you. So it really depends on your context, and I want you to really understand that, and I want to be very clear about that. Some books are just great for particular purposes in particular contexts, and if you change your context a little bit, then it's still a great book. It's just not going to be useful to you, and so there's no point in you spending your money on that. There are other resources that you could add to your library. Regardless of whether you're in a common law context or not, if you speak English as a second or foreign language, then I want to recommend, and this is very unconventional, I know that nobody else is going to be recommending this in the legal English learning community, and I don't care. I think it's a great recommendation. It is a book called Legal Translation Explained. The reason I recommend this book, and I know it seems unconventional, but it's because as someone who speaks English as a second or foreign language, there's a certain level of translation that you're going to be doing at certain points in your language learning process that are natural and they're inevitable. Now, most of your teachers will tell you, don't translate, don't think in your mother tongue, but I don't share that view. I think that we inevitably always will reference what is familiar to us when we're trying to learn a new skill. So the good thing about this book, and the reason why I recommend this, is because, as I said earlier, there are certain stages in the legal English learning process where you will rely heavily on translation. You do that less and less and less the more proficient you become. But if you're at an intermediate level, you're doing a lot of translating still. And so you might as well learn about that process and how to really do it in a way that you get better results. Number 7, Legal Writing in Plain Language by Brian Gardner. I'm a huge Brian Gardner fan, and no, he's not paying me to recommend his books. Now, when it comes to legal writing in plain language, there's some controversy when it comes to one particular thing that sometimes plain language advocates want to do, which is eliminate all terms of art. Personally, I think that's not always necessary. So I agree that when we're writing something that is facing lay people, then we should eliminate our terms of art because lay people do not understand those terms of art. However, when we're writing expert to expert, we're writing to someone who understands the law. In that case, you're writing to someone who really understands that terminology, and using terminology that are true terms of art. And I don't mean legal jargon, I mean true terms of art. I mean terms that carry specific and precise legal meaning. In that case, I personally feel there's a lot of value in preserving true terms of art. So what I'm trying to say is that this one particular objection that people often have to the plain language movement, which is, you can't always eliminate terms of art. Well, you can. The question is, should you? And personally, I think the answer is some contexts, yes, you should. They're absolutely right. In other contexts, maybe you shouldn't. Regardless of where you stand on that particular point when it comes to plain language, the value in this book that I'm recommending, and the reason why I'm recommending it, is because there's a very big part of the plain language movement is about clarity. It is not about dumbing things down or oversimplifying or any of those misconceptions that we often have about the plain language movement. Instead, it is about writing really clearly, about being very effective and very strategic in our communication. And so when that is what they're advocating, then I think that makes a lot of sense, and there's value in what the plain language movement has to offer in terms of how we think about language. Number 8, I recommend a book called Storytelling for Lawyers, and it's by an author called Philip Meyer. Your first impression of this book might be that it is a little common law US centric. However, there are actual actionable recommendations for storytelling. And the way that the author goes about talking about storytelling is it just proposes a new way that we think about how we tell facts that is less mechanical and that is more reader friendly, that is easier for our readers to understand. And so that's where I see the value in this particular book. I do believe that fact telling doesn't have to be that boring, kind of, systematic, we don't really know where you're going. You're just sort of throwing information at the reader and just telling them like this happened and then that happened and that other thing happened and some other thing happened and blah, 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 blah. Because really what happens when you fact tell in that way is that your reader ends up not really understanding, not getting the full picture of the facts. They can't really tell the story in their minds, regardless of what type of analysis you're doing. The truth is that will only work. It will only be effective. It will only be as obvious to your reader as it is to you. And the value of your analysis will only come out if your storytelling is good, if your reader is able to retain all of the information that they need to retain to be able to follow your analysis from beginning to end. That's where storytelling comes in, and that's why I think that this is a good resource to learn about storytelling, even though it is, I do admit, a little common law centric. Number 9 is one of my personal favorites. I am a huge believer that lawyers should be trained in formal logic. It used to be the case many years ago, at least in the civil law world, in many civil law countries, that we were actually trained in formal logic. And we stopped doing that. I don't know why, and I don't know when we stopped, but at some point it became a less important part of our training in many parts of the world. And I think we lost a lot of argumentative and logical quality when we did that. And so many times when I am reading through an argument or listening to someone at a hearing give their oral arguments, and I'm just seeing them use fallacies in their argumentation, I'm thinking, gosh, it would have been so much better to just construct a really solid argument, whether it's a deductive argument of the kind that we make in the civil law world or a more inductive argument by analogy of the kind that are more typical of the common law world. Regardless, it would be really good if we could get that right, like if we could really nail it, right? And so one of the ways that we really nail it is by understanding logic, and especially by understanding how logic relates to language and how language relates to law. These are connections that we're able to make when we understand the role of logic in our profession. And I wish we could bring that back, and I do try to bring it back a little bit in many of my courses and trainings. And what I love about this book that I'm recommending to you right now is that it does that, right? And it does that from a very practical point of view. So the book is called The Force of Logic: Using Formal Logic as a Tool in the Craft of Legal Argument. And number 10, my recommendation, is called Mastering Legal Memos: 5-step framework for writing effective legal memos in English. And it's not a whole book, it's a short PDF that is just an introductory guide, and I wrote that myself. So it's not a big publication like the ones that I mentioned previously, but I do want to recommend it. I put it out there. I created it for people who are trying to learn how to write legal memos, because so many of my students are learning how to write legal memos. And there are many things about legal memos that are not obvious. Memos are a very specific genre. They have a very specific purpose, and it helps to really understand that genre, what a memo is, what its purpose is, and how to do that really well. And I've developed a framework that goes beyond the civil law and common law tradition and is aimed at being able to help you regardless of the type of analysis that you have to make in your legal memo. And as I said earlier, it's free. You can download it from my website. I hope that you found this list really helpful. Please subscribe to my channel so that you get updates every time I publish a new video. Also, if you enjoyed this video, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you would like to comment, maybe there's something I left out, there's a great resource out there that you love, that you found helpful, then please leave a comment. I'm sure that other people will appreciate it. I know that I will definitely appreciate it. I also appreciate the time that you have taken to watch my video today. Thank you very much, and I hope you learned a lot.